This is DDL 139.
I hear bodies.
Good evening, Lance.
Evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ecstatically happy because we have evidence that we have a listener.
A whole listener.
A whole listener. And not only do we have a listener, but he is in the United States. So
An
he's not
international listener.
an international listener. This is fantastic. Only trouble is, it's Doug.
So our old co-host is listening to us.
Oh, he's not that old. We used to make fun of him that he was on the show but never had listened to it, and now it seems that he's listening to it. So give it a few more shows, and we may be able to encourage him to join us.
Oh, we're going to have to try.
He says, "Oh, you guys remembered me, barely, vaguely, but still, I'm touched. Really enjoyed listening. Great to see these up here. And yes, I subscribed. Up here being on the Tube of You, because I've been putting up all the old shows and the new up onto YouTube."
Fantastic. So I have a new job.
Dum, dum, dum.
Dun, dun, dun. Not really, not a full-time job, but I have been given an assignment, shall we say. There's in Irthlingborough, there's a local archaeological society.
How many times did you have to practice that in the mirror before you say it on microphone?
Not many. Yeah, so there's this archaeological society. Look, twice. There you go.
Twice,
absolutely. And there's a plot of land at the sort of southern end of Irthlingborough that, funnily enough, as a quick aside, it's right out the back of where Doug used to live. And it's a wasteland, and it's owned by some national I can't remember the word for it. It's wildlife trust. That's it. And there's a strong suspicion that there's Roman ruins on this piece of land. That they've already found coins and pottery and stuff. And earlier on last year, sort of summertime last year, myself and a friend of mine, Paul, we went along to a meeting of the Archeological Society, and they sort of detailed what their plan is for the next 2 years. And their plan is to clear the area and then get a group of volunteers together and start sort of digging the area after they've had the geophys guys. You've watched Time Team. They're the guys that walk along with all the equipment, and they send the radar thing and yeah. So what they've asked myself and Paul to do, knowing that we're both drone flyers, they want us to do an aerial video of the area to see if anything shows up on the video, because quite often from an aerial view you can see different sort of lines on the ground that show up that you can't see when you're on the ground, and it's the way plants grow differently or don't grow that indicates that there's rocks and stones and what have you underneath the ground. It gives them an idea of where to fix the geophys guys to, because they have to pay, I think it's something like £1,500 a day. Yeah, it's not cheap, and this is obviously a volunteer organisation relying on donations, so they kind of want to make the best of their money. Yeah. So they want us to fly over and see if we can see anything that sort of shouts out to them, "Villa here," and so they can get the geophys guys to mark that area out, so it sort of clarifies where they need to dig.
I guess because I think this was something a couple of years ago where, yes, there are already Google pictures of that area, but as weather changes and as shrubbery changes and things, you don't have Google pictures that are that frequent that you could even compare between them, really.
No,
to see changes like,
especially as I've already had people down there clearing a lot. I mean, this thing was sort of really overgrown with sort of blackberry bushes and that kind of thing, and over the summer last year they had volunteers, including my scout group, down there, and they've cleared the area, so it's just flat land. So it's now sort of ideal to have a new fly. We actually did do a flyover before that, which sort of hinted at a couple of things, which I don't know if I'm not sure I'm allowed to actually show the footage.
Ooh.
Yeah, because well, the problem is, this area does have Roman coins on, which do have a value.
Yep.
So if I sort of publicize exactly where this area is and that there is stuff in there, then that's sort of a green flag for every man and his dog to go and sort of dig. I'm not saying we obviously have enough viewers that are suddenly going to go, oh, let's go digging around there, but you know, it could happen. So I don't think I'm actually allowed to put the footage up onto this broadcast. But yeah, so now we've cleared the area. We're looking this weekend to sort of go down again with our drones and see if we can do another flyover and see what we can see.
Very good. With regards to sort of modern technology and the way that is helping things, a friend of mine works in architecture, and she looks at older buildings and often is sort of on her hands and knees climbing into roofs and under floors and so forth, and trying to get photographs of origins of the buildings. And generally the inside of the buildings have been modified and modernized, but crawl space, loft space, sometimes double walls, these sort of things all can give more clues as to the age of the building and building techniques and all this sort of thing. I recently showed the 360 camera to her, and she's like, if I could have that on like a long selfie stick and just fire that off, that would save me a lot of crawling time. Because bless her, because of her size, she's quite small. She gets sent, oh great, you can go do
You
this
can
job.
fit through here.
You
Yeah.
can go up that chimney. You can go down there. And she says, no, when she loves the whole job, but sometimes it's like, really? Can we get somebody else?
So does your Theta have a fitting to go onto a standard tripod?
It has a fitting to go onto a standard tripod, and what I've got is actually a monopod, which I then can use as an extended selfie stick, really. So I can put that onto the monopod, extend the monopod to about 8 foot, hold that above my head. You're then looking at about 14, 15 feet off the ground.
Oh, fantastic.
And when you take a picture of that gives you a different perspective without using a drone.
So if we were talking earlier on in the week about planning a trip up to Snowdon.
Yep.
So you could fit that to your monopod and sort of strap that to your rucksack or something.
Yep.
Now, would it have too much movement about it as you're walking? Obviously, your body's going to move. Would that move too much for it to be watchable?
There's a couple of things that I've already been thinking about for this, because the technology is available. Firstly, you wouldn't have to do video. What you'd have is you have it linked into the phone using the phone's GPS, and you say to the phone, at every X meters interval, take a picture.
Oh, you can do that.
And then once you've got your however many 100 pictures, you then upload them to Google, and they can become part of Street View.
Oh, wow.
And Google will automatically do any face blurring and all that sort of thing. But actually, if you look at the walk that we did up Pennygint.
Yes, Pennygint, yes.
It was Pennygint, yes.
Yes.
I had to double check that. You'll see that people have already done that. And you can already do that same walk virtually without having to get your feet wet. The other thing is that it's got like gyroscopic awareness inside it. So I can hold the camera out horizontally and it still knows which way's up, which way's down. And when it takes the picture, it still keeps it vertical.
As if you were holding it vertically. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And unlike a phone, where as you turn the phone from one orientation to the other, with the camera, if I then move, and again, I'm doing this without people being able to see what I'm actually doing. If I then move my arm from horizontal to directly above my head, the camera will automatically level the picture out
As you're doing it.
as I'm doing it and maintain it.
So it's kind of got like a gimbal almost.
It's an electronic
An
gimbal.
electronic gimbal, yeah.
There's no actual moving parts inside it.
Yeah.
It does. There are circumstances, believe it or not, when you don't want that to work. One of the things that I've come across is when you're driving the car with it fitted into the dashboard, it somehow, I don't know how the solid state gyroscopes work, but it's somehow influenced by G-force. So as you
Right.
go around the corner, the picture doesn't stay with the car square. It skews to the way that the G-forces are working. And when you're watching that on a computer monitor, you want it to stay so that the window frame and the inside of the car.
So you have to
is
move
solid.
it to keep it pointing out of the front windscreen.
Well, you can turn the gyroscope effects off. That way, it stays locked to the frame of the car.
I'd
And as
love
the
to see
car
a
rocks,
video of
it doesn't
you.
move.
Love to see a video of you driving.
It's not that interesting.
Well, I don't know, just to see it as an interest. It's probably not that interesting to actually sit and watch for 20 minutes while you drive to work or something, but just to see it, the whole thing going on, that'd be kind of interesting. I mean, they've done it on Formula One cars, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's certainly something that I've thought of doing, but like you said, it's having a subject or having
I'll tell you where it'd be good if you went to like a safari park or something like that.
yes, oh, absolutely.
That'd be interesting.
But I need to try and find somewhere that's worth driving around rather than doing a drive to work. And yeah, if I can come up with somewhere like that, then I'll perhaps as the weather gets better, because driving around at the moment, the lighting wouldn't be ideal. But driving around in the summertime when you can see some of the countryside, that might be worth doing.
How many planets do you reckon there are in our solar system?
I feel this is a trick question. I thought there were 8.
Well, yeah. What if I said there could be none, or there could be hundreds, or any number in between those two figures?
Go on.
Right. Do you know the current definition of a planet?
I guess it's mass related, because Pluto has been on again, off again.
Yes. Well, kind of. There's 3 criteria. And I'm going to try and read this out, and I'll probably get it wrong and fluff my words, but here we go. A planet is a celestial body that is A, in orbit around the sun, B, has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium shape, and then in brackets, nearly round. That's what hydrostatic equilibrium means. And C, has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. So,
Okay.
where Pluto fell down and why in 2006 it was declassified as a planet is the fact.
Historical.
No, it's the fact that it hasn't cleared its neighborhood.
Ah.
It's and I'm assuming that's a mass issue in that it isn't big enough to have cleared its area of asteroids and meteorites and what have you,
Old enough,
or isn't. Yeah. So Pluto currently is no longer a planet. However, there's a guy that works for NASA by the name of Alan Sturm. He's the principal investigator of the NASA's New Horizons mission to Pluto, who's not happy about this. And he's basically said this definition was created for the International Astronomical Union by a bunch of astrophysicists.
Yep.
Now, why would you ask a bunch of astrophysicists to define what is a planet rather than asking planetary scientists what defines a planet? It's like asking a pediatrist for brain surgery. They're both doctors, but they're not experts in that field. So his team have come up with a new definition of a planet. And his definition is a planet is a substellar mass body that has never undergone nuclear fusion and that has sufficient self-gravitation to assume a spheroidal shape adequately described by a triaxial ellipsoid regardless of its orbital parameters. And if that sounds a bit too jargony, in layman terms, that means it's a round object in space that's smaller than a star.
Smaller than a star, or hasn't?
Yes. Smaller than a star.
Hasn't become a star.
Yeah, the technical description does state never undergone nuclear fusion, so that means it isn't a star. It can't be a pulsar, it can't be a white dwarf or anything like that. But if it's in space and it's round, then it's a planet.
So it's very similar to the first definition, other than it drops the requirement that it has its own gravity and has cleared its own path.
And the other thing it discounts, as he points out, one of the definitions was a celestial body that is in orbit around the sun. Now, the sun is a singular star, not a sun, the sun.
Yeah.
So therefore, anything that's not in our solar system cannot be classed as a planet. So he's saying, yeah, so let's get rid of that bit. So now it means anything in space that is spherical and has a sufficient gravity to make itself spherical, and it's never been a sun, never been a star.
I guess that the physics of it would pretty much preclude a large celestial body to form without it going around a star.
Probably.
I would think that the physics of it would mean that it has to have an orbit of some sort. But then if we found something that was the shape of Earth, the size of Earth, has gravity like Earth, but it's not orbiting a sun, would we then say, well, duh, that's not a planet?
That's not a planet.
Why would you put that constraint? Yeah, that's a good point.
But the upshot of all of this is it's actually his definition has gone forward for consideration with the International Astronomical Union. They're such big words, aren't they? If it gets accepted, the moon becomes a planet. So does Titan. So does Phobos.
Ooh.
So does Pluto. So does Europa, because they fulfill that criteria. They are spherical, they are in space, and they've never been a star. So there would be planets orbiting other planets.
Ooh, but yeah.
Which adds its own complications, doesn't it?
Yeah, would you not have to then reclassify what a moon is?
Yeah, there wouldn't be such a thing as a moon, surely, unless it's something that isn't spherical.
Interesting. I wonder if the process of orbiting is what makes the smaller ones round. Oh, well, you've opened a whole can of celestial worms here, sir. A couple of years ago, we went to, it was Donington, wasn't it?
It was.
I'm asking you before telling you. A couple of years ago, we went to Donington for the pre-season testing of Formula E.
We did.
And it was fun.
It was very fun.
It was it's gone on, and there's now been 2 seasons.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
I think we're near the end or at the end of the 2nd season. It's been all over the world, and earlier in this year, I was quite happy to see the the race that was in Marrakesh, where we'd been a couple of months earlier. The e-cars, I don't think it's as big as Formula One yet.
Not even close.
No, and it's got some big names behind it, and it's got a lot of interest, but it's still quite a niche thing for people to get involved with. And there is now a sub-genre, if it were, to this nicheness, in that they are developing robot cars to actually race as well.
Right.
You say right, and I can. What I'm looking at here is that the Formula One has given us a lot of improvement in road cars.
Yeah.
I believe that Formula E will do the same for electric road cars. It then goes to make sense that surely robotic Formula E will improve self-driving cars. If you can drive around a race course at breakneck speeds, applying very specific rules, but not necessarily all having the same brain in these cars, and they are racing against each other, then it makes for better way of behaving for road cars.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. However, would it be interesting to watch?
Well, here's the thing.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if it's not interesting to watch, people won't watch it. And if people don't watch it, the format collapses and the investment and the innovation disappears.
Would you say that Formula One is interesting to watch?
To be fair, now I believe there have been some very interesting races in the last couple of years. However, I haven't watched many of them because for a start, a lot of it's on Sky, and I don't have Sky, and it's just worked out recently that every race that's on terrestrial TV happens to be on a weekend when I have my daughter. So I tend to be driving up the M1 while they're driving around a racetrack. So I haven't actually seen many races. However, I've kept sort of in touch with what's happened in the races and all the sort of talking points around each race. And I do think it's still relatively interesting. The races themselves might be boring. I couldn't tell you that because I haven't watched them. But the sort of the goings on around it, the circus, if you like, is still interesting. But of course, you're not going to have that circus of the personality of the drivers and who said what and who crashed into who and what have you.
Well,
when there is nobody driving the car.
No, but I'm just using computer names here. I doubt very much whether these would be the big runners. But if IBM, Microsoft, and Google were doing similar to, I don't know that the format would be the same, but if you had qualifying and grid positions and racing that followed the same format as existing Formula races, to see the IBM car go out and do a lap, the Google car go out, and last season it wasn't as quick as the IBM, but oh my goodness, how on earth have they shaved those extra seconds off? And I think you've still got the opportunity there for the same sort of excitement. I think that a lot of the time with Formula One, when you've got the helmets and the cars are all the same shapes and you don't really see the people, I think the whole stuff that's on after and between the races, to me, is a little bit by the by.
Yeah, but then again, you're watching a race. If everything went to plan in a Formula One race, it would be a really boring race. Right, I think that's a given. However, there's the human element. There's human error. There's somebody that takes a different line, completely throws everybody else behind them out, and there's a collision. Now, yes, there's scope for that to happen in a computer-driven car, because it just might have a software glitch and suddenly stop in the middle of the track or something, and all the cars have to sort of quickly work out that there is an object stopped and get around it and what. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think it would be anywhere near as exciting as having an actual person in the car driving.
Well, the stage we are at the moment, I partly agree with you, and I think that once you start looking at the absolute pinnacle, then yes, this car is going to know that the car in front of it is better and not bother to overtake. Duh.
I mean,
But
have you heard of a game? Not a game, a thing called Anki Overdrive.
Never heard of it.
Right. It's imagine Scalextric,
Yep.
but without slots.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I have heard of it. Yes.
We've got it at our house. My housemate's got it, and
Yep.
we've played it a few times. And if left to their own devices, those cars will quite happily just drive around this track without you having any input in it whatsoever.
Yep.
And it's the most boring thing in the world to watch. Now, I can only assume it's going to be that on a bigger scale. What makes it interesting is the fact that, yes, you can physically tilt your smartphone, which is connected to the car, and change lanes. You can speed it up, you can slow it down, and you can fire guns at the other car.
Yeah.
Now, that makes it interesting. But if just left to their own devices, where they're following their own algorithm round the track, it's boring as hell.
But if you've got an Android phone and your mate's got an Apple phone, and they've both got different apps that can control the phone, that can control the car, and there's a bit of competition between the apps to actually try and shave that corner off, or try, and still you'll go back to, because I think looking back at Formula One in recent years, the biggest innovations tend to have been in shapes of nose cones and under trays and
the
fins,
blown diffuser and
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where suddenly a team that wasn't doing well this last season comes out with a ever so slightly different shaped car, and they and then everybody spends the rest of the season catching them up. I think that plays in sometimes more than the drivers. And I think that sort of thing would still happen even with these robotic cars. The news story that I read about was they've only got 2 of these cars at the moment, and they are identical. And so they have got the same brain, they're using the same software. And yet one of the cars thought it could take the corner quicker than the other and went off the track. Another one, on another lap, it clipped a barrier, because the scanning technology isn't to that standard yet that it can say that barrier is out of place. It's approaching at it at breakneck speed. It knows that it's got this width of track, but it doesn't have the sense to know that as the wind's blowing, the end of that barrier is moving, and it catches it and it's off. So there's still variables in there that can make a race out of something.
But that would point to it not having the ability to real-time scan the track, so therefore it wouldn't know that there's another car close by.
The level of detail.
Yeah.
The higher the, well, it will know that there's another car, but it needs, and this is
I
what
suppose something that's a meter long and half a meter wide or something shows up a lot easier than a flimsy piece of barrier. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I can see that.
And also this also what will drive the improvement of the scanning technology. Once the scanning technology can tell to the millimeter how much road you've got to use, then that team can use the full width of the road to their advantage and perhaps gain fractions of a second per lap. One of the other things that did happen on the race, and I'm almost tempted to think that this was staged because I've never seen it happen in any other formula. A dog was loose on the track, and the car was approaching it at full speed, realized there was something on the track that shouldn't be there, and stopped.
That's quite impressive.
Yeah.
To be fair, that is quite impressive.
I'm
Although
not
it
sure
has
we'd have
happened
heard about
before.
it.
It has
It has
happened.
happened.
Yeah, I saw a video the other day on. I don't know whether it was a Formula One. It was some sort of single seat formula, but a deer ran across the track, and the guy obviously had to take sort of fairly drastic action. But yeah, so it has happened.
I guess the thing is, if the car hadn't stopped, we probably wouldn't have seen the pictures. And that's it for another show. Thank you for listening. If you feel the need to leave a comment, please do so either on Facebook or on YouTube. Thankfully, we've not yet had the spammers attacking us on either, so we're probably going to get you to comment if you do leave one. You can still leave another one if you want to, Doug. You're not limited to one comment per show.